Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Ruminations. I am your host, Bobby Gill. Today's guest is Pablo Borelli. He's the co-founder of Ovis 21, the Savory Hub in Argentina that has directly influenced over 26 million hectares and trained more than 5,000 people in holistic management and holistic plant grazing. Ovis 21 is one of, if not the most successful savory hubs in the world, both as a thriving business and for its outsized impact in terms of hectares regenerated, people trained, and industries transformed. Pablo is a Savory accredited holistic management educator, an ecological outcome verification or EOV master verifier, and a former member of Savory's global staff where he led the EOV global program. Under his leadership, Ovis 21 has introduced innovations that are reshaping the wool industry, including the multi-purpose merino breed, the sustainable wool chain, and of course, the widespread adoption of holistic management throughout South America. Born and raised in Patagonia, Pablo earned his degree in agronomy from Mar del Plata National University, and he has devoted his career to solving the ecological challenges of arid grasslands. His early work focused on desertification in Patagonia, where he worked to help local producers restore degraded landscapes through effective grassland management, though we will hear from Pablo in this episode why he wasn't necessarily effective at that at the time. Might be due to the fact that he was not yet introduced to holistic management. He later served as research station director for Argentina's National Institute of Agricultural Technology, or INTA, and he contributed to the creation of a national sheep policy while working for the National Agriculture Secretary. In 2011, Pablo co-developed the Grassland Regeneration and Sustainable Standard, or GRASS, in partnership with the Nature Conservancy. The GRASS standard certified over 1 million hectares of Patagonian land, and through a collaboration with Pablo, the Savory Institute, Michigan State University, and other leading rangeland scientists, the GRASS standard was further expanded upon and evolved into what is now known as Savory's Ecological Outcome Verification Protocol, which is being used to monitor ecological health on over 3 million hectares around the world and serves as proof of land regeneration in Savory's Land to Market program. I'm really excited for you to hear this episode today. We dive into Pablo's background in agronomy, what it was like first being introduced to holistic management and some of the paradigm shifts that were needed and things he needed to unlearn or relearn. And then we do a deep dive on holistic management and holistic plant grazing. Given that this is early on in the podcast, we thought this was important to kind of cover at length. If you're someone who has been around the world of holistic management for quite some time, that part might not be as informative as, we're not getting into more advanced techniques or specifics there, more just kind of doing the overview for folks that are newer to the space. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Pablo is an incredible leader who is doing amazing work down in Argentina and beyond. So without further ado, let's hear the episode with Pablo Borelli. This episode is brought to you by Savory's growing community of regenerating members, listeners like you who care about real solutions for our global grasslands. Over the past decade, the Savory Institute has helped restore more than 100 million acres through holistic plant grazing, creating productive and resilient landscapes where fertile soils lead to healthy food and thriving communities. But this kind of impact is only possible with support from people like you. For just $10 a month, less than the cost of lunch, your support can help restore nearly 400 acres of land every single year. And as a regenerating member, you'll join our global community of over 600 like-minded people committed to making real change where it matters the most. You'll get access to Savory's private online network, a free holistic management online course, discounts from partner brands, and even opportunities to connect with Alan Savory. Signing up is fast, easy, and it makes a real impact. Just visit savory.global/member, that's savory.global/member, and start making an impact today. Pablo Borelli, good to see you, my friend.
Very nice to see you, Bobby.
Yeah, how long has it been since we've seen each other in person?
Yeah, at least, 4 to 5 years. Yeah.
My God.
Before the pandemic.
Was it really before the
For sure.
pandemic? Wow. Time has flown, and in that time, I know you've been a busy man. I know you've been training people in holistic management, all throughout South America and the world, and getting involved with ecosystem service markets and out monitoring land bases of all types and just generally shaking things up in the land management world all throughout South America and beyond. So you run a Savory Hub, Ovis 21, and it's the Savory Hub that covers Argentina. By my numbers, you guys have influenced over 26 million hectares of grassland, and you've trained over 5,000 people in holistic management. Many of them are probably trained directly by you. Um, you're one of, if not the most successful Savory Hubs in the world, both in terms of the hectares that you've regenerated and just the massive scale of your business and what you've been able to influence throughout the sheep industries, the wool industries, and beyond. Tell folks just about your path. Where did you start? How did you get into this work? How did you get interested in grasslands and agronomy, I guess? And then how did that eventually lead you to holistic management?
You're right. That's to make it short. I am from the southernmost tip of the continent, South America. I'm from Rio Gallegos, that close to the Magellan Strait. And when I finished high school and decided what I wanted to study, I decided agronomy because it was the closest that we didn't have at that moment range management colleges in Argentina. So agronomy was the closest, and I went up north to study agronomy, but with the idea of coming back to my place. And after I did the training in ecology, and I had a professor that was he saw that I was interested in grasslands, and he gave me the first papers of range management that I could read. And when I went back that summer, and I saw the land, and I could decodify or understand what was happening, it was so sad. The certification, the overwhelming desertification and the erosion of the land, that I said, this is what I want to do, what I want to do with my life. And that was my commitment that I kept until now. And when I finished my career, I started working as a scientist for INTA, and I started working on grassland evaluations. So I started doing metrics for the grasslands, and I started working on the old paradigm of range management, which was adjust the stocking rate. The problem is the sheep, so you need to reduce the number of sheep. So I kept first as a scientist, and after that as a consultant, I kept almost 2 decades telling people that they needed to reduce their sheep stocks to be able to keep their grasslands alive. And after that amount of time, after making a lot of people lose a lot of money, we realized that we were killing the patient with our recommendations. The grasslands did not improve at all. And I wasn't aware of holistic management at all. I couldn't find a direct reading of holistic management up to that moment. And I heard it through Wally O'Connor, who was a sheep classer that came from Australia. And he made a training in Australia. And he said, you're wasting your time with adjusting stocking rates on continuous grazing. You need to do holistic management. So I am grateful to Wally in the sense of telling us the truth and showing an alternative. And also, I am grateful to the Fenton family, our partners, co-founders of Ovis 21. They say, I want to try my place. So in 2008, we brought Brian Marshall to Patagonia, and we did the first holistic plant grazing in Patagonia in 2008.
Mm.
And just a few months later, the results were amazing. I've never seen that before. So then we couldn't stop. We had to learn and learn, and it has been a fascinating a journey.
When Wally came to visit and he was telling you that the way that you're doing things are wrong, that adjusting stocking rates isn't going to solve the desertification that you were experiencing in Patagonia. I would assume for a lot of people that that would put them on their heels and put them on guard, that they would get defensive. Be like, no, 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 we're right. It's what you're talking about is ridiculous. It's snake oil. That's kind of the perspective that we get from a lot of folks when they hear about regenerative grazing, holistic plant grazing, things in that field. So what was it that allowed you to not be defensive when holistic management was first brought to you?
Well, I think if you are serious about your purpose, then you need to be detached from your paradigms. So for that moment, it was quite obvious that we were failing. So it would be very stupid to reject an opportunity to solve the problem when you haven't been able to do so for a long time. So I think it's a matter of focusing on the purpose. We needed to solve the certification. It was not important to be right. Unfortunately, many people that have a say and talk about against regenerative management, they are not managing land. And so they don't suffer the consequences of their recommendations. And in our case, that as we were working on the private sector, if my client goes declining, I don't have a business, a viable business. So we needed to produce solutions for the farmer, and it was clear that what we were proposing was not enough, not good enough, and holistic management produced very quick results, very impressive results, and as we learned how to use it, I could say it clearly saved my career and allow us to see the land coming back, which was my earliest dream.
Mm.
So it was like a dream come true to see a grassland flowering, everything going back and coming back to life, and the farmer very happy, and it was so rewarding to see that, and this is the reason why I'm working in this.
What was it that initially drew you to grasslands and rangelands? I think a lot of
Well,
folks in the environmental space, there's a lot of people that are drawn to, the big charismatic megafauna and oceans and forests. Grasslands don't usually rise to the top of the list for a lot of people. So what was it about grasslands that initially drew you in those early days?
well, yeah, because my identity is Patagonian, and in Patagonia you only have grasslands to work with. And my family come from the rural sector, so I had an experience of the sheep farming from my early days, and I was committed to solve those problems. I was not thinking globally in that moment. Even when we started holistic management, we were not thinking globally. We were thinking locally. And after that, we realized that solving regeneration or getting those grasslands to work, it was a great contribution to very, very important global problems like climate change or land degradation. But it wasn't we were not coming from that very, very wide purpose. It was just, how can we do to make this farming more sustainable? And I would need to say that in Patagonia, current sheep production is not sustainable, and we have 30% of the farms closed, abandoned. So it is a dead or life or death situation.
Mm.
So I was not thinking of the whole world. I was thinking of my place.
Mm. And then, okay, so then Ricardo Fenton raised his hand and said, "Yeah, let's try this out on my farm." And you guys brought
Yeah.
Brian Marshall out. He's an educator from Australia. He's been doing this for decades. He taught. Guys,
Yes.
how many people were there at that first training?
Well, he came first for Monte Dinero 1 year, and the second year, Jose Gortázar from in Chile, it was our partner, and he got some money from the government for a program that allowed us to bring Brian Marshall for 2 years. And we were planning 5 farms in Chile, and we added other 5 farms in Argentina. So he would come for a couple of weeks, and I would go with him farm by farm and doing planning and seeing the results. And it was really a great moment. And we are very grateful to Brian for all the things he taught us. And so at the first time, we were not training people. The first training course was done in 2011, and Brian was the trainer. We brought him from Australia. For the first group, it was 12 educators, professionals that we trained, and myself included. And in 2013, we did our first training from Ovis 21. So I started the training in Spanish for the first time in 2013.
How was it received in the region? You know, like from a cultural perspective, from producers in the region, was it easy to share this with folks just because they were at a point of desperation? Like you were saying, 30% of farms had already shuttered their doors. Were people willing and open for this, or did it
No,
take an effort
no.
to get this in front of people?
The ironic thing is that yes, we had serious trouble to reach the minimum number of attendants to have this training. That it was so new and so disruptive that most of the farmers did not believe that this was good, and still they think that way. It is hard for us, even with the evidence, at their sites, to change that. Is that this region has gone into a declining trend that includes people's awareness or people's interest. So it is very complex. It's more for a social study than a technical study. We have the results very consistent. We have proved that we can improve all ecosystem function, and we can sequester carbon, all Patagonian grasslands. But people are resistant to change for some reasons that I cannot truly understand or deeply understand.
Well, it's human nature, I think.
Yep.
Some people, you know, you look at Everett Rogers and his diffusion of innovation theory, and he's got that U-shaped curve. And, you know, there's the early adopters, the early innovators, the early majority, the late majority, and then that last 16% is the laggards, those people that are just never going to come around to whatever it is you're trying to help them understand that can benefit them.
Yeah.
So when you guys started doing holistic management, how quick did you start to see results? And what were some of the first results that you saw where you knew, okay, there's something to it, this is working?
Well, the results on the grassland were immediate. Oh, so we did the planning with Brian in August, and I went to to the farm in December, and all the paddocks that all the farm looked quite different. I was going to that farm since 1990, so I knew it, every place of it, and it was amazing, the change in terms of the flowering of the legumes, the grasses growing very vigorously, and everything. The grassland is like closing the spaces, and you see really a vibrant community. And it was very uh, compelling to see that. But at the same time, in our first years, we committed several mistakes on the animal performance. So that beginning, I think it was very negative for the growth of the holistic management practice, because we took a long time to fix what was wrong in there. We spent 5 years to fix the mistakes, in terms of, we did very big bunches of sheep. You can see one of those in the TED Talk of Alan,
Hmm.
and that was amazing to see that it was wrong in terms of animal welfare,
Let's
and it took us some time to fix that. Since 2013, we haven't recorded any loss in animal production, but in many people, the memory is those years of in which we had trouble with thin animals, low performance, in some episodes of mortality. So it affected seriously our reputation over there.
Can you explain a little bit about why animal performance was affected, and what specifically you were trying, and how that affected animal performance, like just getting into the mechanisms of what was at play?
Yes, well, okay. The sheep is a very selective animal. As ruminants are smaller, they are more selective, and in the Patagonian winters are very special. It's not something that you have in many places of the world. That's very cold and dry, and what sheep naturally do is to be very selective on grazing, and to reduce their activity. So they don't walk much. They do short days. They don't want to move. And we were and they split in small groups. And what we did was to put 17,000 sheep in one group. And when they were in that density, they used to eat things that they didn't like to eat because they were low quality. So it's like getting someone that you want to lose weight. What you do? Increase your activity, increase your exercise, and to eat more fiber. And that's what we did with the sheep. They changed their diet for a more fibrous diet, and they walked a lot more. Let's say 30% in terms of energy more. And the result was they lose weight during the winter, and they were too weak at the end of the winter that they couldn't lamb, they couldn't raise a lamb, they would produce less wool. A lot of consequences that because of a very negative energy balance. When we reduce the area using, let's say, grazing units or grazing modules or cells, smaller in area, and we did less movements, then we got to an equilibrium, and now we are happy with that. We have a protocol for Patagonian sheep that we didn't have when we started.
Is that something that you find in cattle production as well, or with other ruminants, or is this something that is specific to sheep?
Now, this is specific to the Patagonian context. You need to be alert. In holistic management, you hardly will find a failure on the grassland side. I don't know one case in 15 years. No, it's no risk at all in not improving what you have, but the reducing animal performance, it's something that can happen, especially in environments that are restricted. For example, subtropical grasslands or tropical grasslands that have C4 grasses that reduce a lot the quality in the non-growing season. If you're not careful, you may have a big reduction in animal production, or you have a wrong calving season. So the cows are calving in the worst time of the year, and you don't have a match into the grass between the grassland dynamic and the herd dynamic. So if there's always need, because the business is produced by the cow or the sheep, it's not produced by the grass. You don't sell the grass, and the farmer needs to increase its production to reward for that better management. This is a business, and so in any case, you need to watch animal condition, body scores, and see what is happening with nutrition, and be aware and detect the problems early rather than late. And when you do that, it works perfectly.
We jumped kind of straight into some of the issues with learning holistic management and lessons learned along the way. Maybe for our listeners, since this is only the very beginning of this podcast, maybe let's set the stage and actually talk about holistic management and what it is, how it works, what are the underlying principles and key insights about it. Here, hey, Pablo, I've heard that there's this regenerative grazing thing called holistic management. I hear that you're one of the world experts in it. Can you teach me about it?
All right, I will try. Yes, of course I can do. Well, first I would say that holistic management is not a grazing system or a method, or it is far beyond that. It is a way of it's kind of a philosophy, because it is the way you see things, and the way you see things defines what you think, and what you think defines what you do. And so, what do you see when you are walking across the land, and how do you make decisions? This is the first thing of holistic management, and it deals with the root cause of many of the problems we have, which is linear thinking or reductionist thinking. We humans, the law of gravity, we tend to think linearly, which means the context to make decision is the problem itself. So you have a problem, you solve the problem, and you don't take into account the relationships of the whole and the consequences, and if you're addressing the root cause. So normally we make decisions that address the symptoms instead of the causes of the problems, and create new problems. So that, as Alan says very, very clearly, humans, no matter what is the culture or the country or the education level, we tend to make decisions linearly. And to skip from that, it's something you need to learn, because linear thinking comes with your genes. It's inside your evolution. We have evolved solving problems that are mechanic, but not. So that's why we can fly to the moon, but we cannot solve climate change, and we cannot solve hunger or poverty. So because complex problems require holistic approach, and we tend to do linear thinking. So this is the first thing. And for some people may look like very vague, but I can tell you very quickly examples of rural practice that are full of this linear thinking. Like you have a problem with a weed, and the problem is the weed. So in linear thinking, the context for making decision is the weed. So the first question is, what kills this weed? So you go for a good herbicide or cutting it with a machine. Yeah. The holistic thinking is why this plant is here. And what I am doing that is inviting this plant to come in and try to understand the relationship, the community dynamics, how things are related. And then you change your management first, and then the weed is not a problem anymore. So you have full of examples. For example, chemical fertilization. It's an example of linear thinking. There's a lot of them. So in common practice on every day, you find that you could make decisions in another way, that understanding better the things, the complexity of what are you managing, and trying to work mimicking nature and favoring ecosystem processes, which is a totally different approach, or trying to dominate nature and to go against what is designed. So this is the first thing. The second thing is to understand the different environments you have in the planet. And some practices are good in some places, and some practices are not. And so here comes the brittleness scale that Alan proposed, which is understanding how the carbon cycles in the environment. When you have constant humidity, carbon cycles very fast. So normally in those places you have forest and carbon cycles by the action of microbes, and you don't have big herbivores on that situation. And as you go to places that get dry for a while, and in the other extreme to places that are permanently dry except for very small windows, well, carbon cannot recycle unless you have herbivores. Herbivores are the component that nature designed to cycle carbon and to keep that functioning as a carbon pump. So you need to retire the old stuff to allow the new stuff to come back. So if you understand the brittleness degree, you understand you get to the next point, which is understand the role of herbivores. All the bibliography that I have been reading in the academy for grasslands was talking about grazing as a disturbance. As the grasslands were there, and now we put those herbivores and they're causing disturbance. And so the idea of that taking care of the grassland was a matter of reducing the herbivores to allow it to grow. So although I was considering myself an expert, at that moment when I met holistic management and understood that herbivores are an essential part of the carbon cycle and the functioning of the grasslands, and you cannot imagine at all healthy grassland without herbivores and predators. So herbivores and predators they mutually need one and the other, in the sense of, I don't know any ecosystem, aquatic or the soil or the grasslands or whatever, in which a herbivore doesn't have predators. So when I understood the role of herbivores and the predators, and I started reading about the Pleistocene, which I haven't been interested in 40 years or 30 years, I started looking at the Pleistocene and say, These grasslands that I am managing spent 400,000 years with a lot of herbivores and predators. And those herbivores and predators, most of them are extinct. But they played a role. And who's playing that role now? And that was mind-blowing for me to understand that all the grasslands of the world have co-evolved with a lot of herbivores and predators, but that in nature, the behavior of those was very important. And it's kind of a rhythm or a dance, herbivores defend themselves against predator by making big herds. And they, as they are in big herds, they need to move. So that created naturally like a rhythm, like a dance. So every place of the grassland should have episodes of grazing followed by long rest periods. And when we went and put the fences over there and put the animals year round, we finished with that rhythm and started doing something that nature never did. That it is to fence animals and let them in all the year. And so we humans, most of that fauna is extinct. And we humans, the only tool that we have, as Alan says, is our domestic animals to manage the grasslands and to keep them healthy by making this carbon pump function. I can explain a little bit more about the carbon pump.
Sure, please do.
Those pumps, water pumps that you see sometimes in the farms, that they have two phases. One, when you move move the pump, you fill an envelope with water, and then you move, and the water goes out. So you have one movement in which you are filling and one movement in which you are taking the water away. Well, the carbon cycle in the grasslands, it's like a carbon pump. And the carbon pump fills when the animals are away. So the plants grow their leaves and their stems, and they grow their roots, and they really populate the soil with roots and root exudates, feeding the soil biota. And it gets to a point in which it won't charge anymore. So the pump is filled. And to make another cycle, you need to discharge that pump. And that's the role of the herbivore. And the herbivores, if you don't take away that material, the pump is not working. You take that whenever you have a grazing event, you will reduce the aerial material, but also you will lose some roots, and you will stimulate root exudates. So it's like a big event of sending all the resources back to the soil. And you have litter, you have dung, you have urine, you have root exudates, and you have dead roots. So that's a kind of a party below for the soil biota. So some of the microbes that Brian Marshall used to say may have some hangover for such a party over there, but then you start a new cycle. And you put that cycle to work on millennia, and that's the dark soils that we are cropping now. So Argentina is famous for the pampas and the molly soils, the dark soils that we have there. And that's just the result of that carbon pump working all the time. And so the role of the herbivore is critical, and there's unthinkable to have healthy grasslands without a vital part like the herbivore. And the predator, and we are the predator. We need to understand we need to regulate the size of the herd, and we need to regulate the movements of the herds. The two roles of a predator need to be done by the humans. Uh, uh, so that's what we do with the holistic plant grazing in terms of deciding where to go, how many animals, for what, how long, what is the recovery period, how long they will be coming back, and trying to adjust the carbon pump to function. So the final understanding is the concept of overgrazing. Many times I heard that word for all my career, but for a long time I thought that overgrazing was having too many cows or too many sheep or grazing too closely to the ground. That was my idea of overgrazing. And I found out, or I understood now that that's totally wrong. And that this is one of the key insights that Alan says, the definition of overgrazing that comes from André Voisin. André Voisin was very clever in the 50s and the 60s to define overgrazing as when a plant gets consumed before it has recovered from the previous defoliation. So whenever you go back to a plant that has not recovered, and that's critical. So managing time is the most important thing that you're doing when managing grasslands. And see, if you understand the concept of overgrazing, you can understand that it's impossible to mitigate overgrazing with continuous grazing. That was what I was trying to do. No way, because if you reduce stocking rate in continuous grazing, the only thing you are doing is reducing the percentage of plants that have been overgrazed. Because if you have few amount of animals, they will not be able to eat all the plants. So probably you have less plants overgrazed, but you will start having overresting, which is plants that haven't been eaten for decades, and they can die of overresting. So there's no solution on continuous grazing. It took me a lot of time, a lot of thought to understand that. But that's the fourth key insight. And I would say grazing is good, but it needs to happen in very short episodes with a proper resting after that. And you need to plan for that. That doesn't happen by improvisation. You are very unlikely to do the things right, because managing a farm, livestock farm, has so many complexities that you cannot be improvising and going where there is grass and losing all the control of the process. So after doing holistic plant grazing after 15 years, I can imagine going backwards and managing livestock without a plan.
You mentioned overresting a plant, and that's a term I know that is unique to holistic managers, and you don't often find in grassland ecology. And so I'm curious, what was that like coming from an agronomy background to hear a concept like this? Like, had that thought crossed your mind before, that like, okay, there's overgrazing on one hand, but the flip side of that coin is undergrazing or overresting? Like,
Yeah.
what was it like to hear that?
No, when you have a paradigm, all the data that doesn't fit with your paradigm is invisible. So I visited, I would say very, I love to go to grazing enclosures to see what they look like, places that haven't had livestock for a long time. And it's incredible how your mind can ignore some data. There was a lot of cases in which the grass was gray and dying. And then maybe I see something that was good because I found a brome that is hard to find outside the enclosure, but everything was. After you understand the concept that this is, yes, unique, and I think it's Alan's merit to have defined that. Wow, there's a lot of plants that die from overresting. And our tussock grasses in Patagonia are a clear example. All the grazing exclosures that have more than 20 years in Patagonia are gray, oxidized. They lost their all the tussocks, and they have just opportunistic short-lived plants and a lot of bare ground and erosion, as Alan says in the TED Talk. So I ignored that concept. And when I saw those grasses that were gray and oxidizing, I thought it was a plague, like a bug that was eating the center of the plants. Never thought about overresting. But once you get those tussock grazed and you see the response, you can have the whole story. The best tussock grassland that I've seen in my life are those that received a moderate grazing and had a long rest after that. The greenness and the health of those grasslands, it's has no equal. In very long rests, you get at the end with gray grasses. The carbon pump is filled. Nobody is taking out the old stuff. So that was a big discovery.
How do you know when you're out in the field if you're looking at a plant that is overrested?
It's very easy. Healthy plants do not have gray pieces, oxidized material. They may have green leaves, or they may have yellow leaves. That mean they are from the current or the past growing season, and they look yellow. They don't look gray. The material that stays out in the field without being consumed for a long time, it gets gray or black, and they end up detached from the plant, and the plant dies in the center, and you have only the places that are exposed to light. Those remain green, but it's very easy to see it.
And that's
Yeah.
And that's not palatable or provide any nutrition to the wildlife.
No. I think that, tussock in our Patagonian condition benefit from moderate to light grazing, not going so deep. But but I would say that they require some amount of grazing. And we have seen that if you want to do that with sheep, you can kill them. So you need larger herbivores like cattle to do that work. Horses and cattle instead of sheep. So we need to go into mixed grazing, because otherwise you want the sheep to do a job that they're not prepared to do, because those tussocks are low quality food.
So you've basically just given an overview of what is traditionally known as the 4 key insights of holistic management.
Yeah.
The first one being that nature, as a complex adaptive living system, functions in wholes, as a whole ecosystem where everything is interconnected and interdependent on other living things in that ecosystem. The second being the brittleness scale, that is the annual distribution of moisture that is available on a landscape. So is there a year-round growing season, or is there a specific dormant season followed by a growing season? That affects how you would manage the landscape, depending on if you're on the brittle, brittle meaning that, like, if you bring some of that brown, tan, yellow grass in your hand and you crunch it up, it'll break. Brittle or non-brittle, that's more year-round moisture, like you would find in a tropical region. It's going to bounce back. It's going to be green. The third key insight, the predator-prey relationship, that speaks to the behavior and the dynamics of animals when they're together. And then the fourth one, that overgrazing is not a function of number of animals on a landscape, but rather overgrazing is a function of timing. And you rightly gave credit to André Voisin, who is the French agronomist that Alan Savory credits for inspiring a lot of the of this work. Alan also credits Jan Smuts, who is a South African who wrote a book holism and evolution. And I guess that kind of ties back into that first key insight of nature
Yeah.
functioning in wholes. Okay, so I think,
Perfect. Summary.
yeah, I'm trying to be a stand-in to do what I can and ask the dumb questions when necessary or provide synopses when when they can be helpful for the listener.
Okay.
Um, all right, so that's the key insights. What would you say is the next important piece to understand about holistic management?
Well, I think that um, holistic management, then when you get into practice, I think the first thing is a holistic context.
Hmm.
Clearly, you need to have define what do you want and what is important and what is the quality of life that you want. That is first thing. No, with no context, no holistic management. So we after these years of experience, I can tell who has a really a good context defined or who has not. The context is a document. It's a very simple document in which all decision makers in a whole define what is important in terms of the business, in terms of the social of relationships, and in terms of the environment that they are managing, and define which is the future resource base. And that definition is critical, especially for family farms in which several people involved in the big companies, and so there is a lot of things that can be fixed when you have a clear context. And this is the first thing I would say. And in our network, we have today more than 200 farms working with us, and not all of them have a holistic context, and or some of them have what I would say a failed holistic context, is which you did it but you didn't mean it. So it's that holistic context is useless. But those people that have created a holistic context by deep reflection and meaning, and they commit to it, they are the best performers by far. They do well, and they are enjoying. The most important thing is they're enjoying the trip. They have a fulfilling lifestyles because they have a purpose. They know why they are in the farm, and they feel proud about the things they are doing. And the other thing is the youngsters want to go to the farm. They want to be rural with a purpose. So this is the most important thing. And if you take it as a bureaucratic thing, it doesn't make any difference. If it's really meaningful, sincere, it can help a lot, and it will create um, an environment of abundance because everything starts to flow. And in holistic management, in the farm, people is the most complicated part. And if you don't have if you're not right with the people, you're not in a good position to succeed. So to have people aligned, you need to have the proper context.
Can you speak a little more to how defining a holistic context allows someone to better manage their land and livestock? Because, so a holistic context, I like to think of it as a guiding North Star. It's defining what it is you want in life. What do you want your quality of life to be like? What do you want the surrounding environment that supports you to be like? What does everything look like long into the future? And then, what does your behavior have to be to get there? Like, why is it
Yep.
important? I mean, I think many people write that part off. They want to skip right over it. That sounds a little woo woo. Who cares? I want to get down to brass tacks. Tell me how to bunch my animals and move them and get the highest performance out of my animals and my landscape, and let me make the most money. Why would someone need to start with talking about quality of life and behaviors?
Well, it's um, because many people are enthusiastic, but they are not consistent in the way they make decisions. So they may do one step one direction, two steps backwards, and they don't. Uh, they make decisions individually and reductionist. So even if you are a rock star moving your cows, you may be very bad managing people, your own family, or managing your business. So it is, yes, I think that the performance in the decision making changes. And I've seen a lot of people that did good on the grassland side, but they cannot solve some dramatic problems, social issues, or business issues because they are not thinking right. And so I would say this is the place to start with. Of course, we work with all the farmers that want to work with us, and some of them do not grab this concept and they don't see it. And we work with them anyway because, well, at least they are improving their management, and we think that maybe it's a maturation process, and then we could get to that point later on. If you don't work with them, you don't have the chance of a good conversation after achieving some things that are more close to the things he wants. So, but I would say this: the other problem is that if you don't have a context, it's very hard to apply the planning procedures. If you don't have a context, making decisions about grazing or about pasture production, or making decisions about finance or the landscape, it's very hard. So I think there is the beautiful thing about holistic management is that grazing plan, land plan, and finance plan, they communicate and they boost one to the other. So a lot of quality is lost when you just take a piece of it. It is holistic when you take the whole thing.
Mhm.
And when I've seen uh, outstanding examples of land plans and and a few, sadly, few financial plans. But when you get the package all together in one piece, you see the value of it. It is such a valuable thing. If you take pieces, you may benefit from the pieces, but you never reach the total value of the proposal that Alan and all the people that work with him and have elaborated.
Mm. Well, we're about an hour in. If I know listeners of podcasts, they're probably saying, when are we going to talk about the actual grazing planning? I thought that's what you did at Savory. I thought that's what this was all about. I think what you're showing us is that there's a lot more to it than just planned grazing. But that is a very important component of it. So why don't we dive in a little bit to holistic planned grazing? What is it and how does it differ from, say, other grazing systems that are out there?
All right. Well, I love this question. Uh, Holistic plant grazing, in the first difference is that it's a structured procedure. So you go step by step using an aid memoir, and it has a brilliant creation, which is the grazing chart, which allows you to work with the people of the farm, with the cowboy, with the gaucho, in the table, without any technology barrier. And you work on you can see 7 months from now, the next 7 months, day by day, where the animals are going to be. So you get a visual conscience of your decisions. What are you going to do? And all the things that I know, all the other systems that I know are either or schematic or stay year round, continuous grazing, or they have a rotation that they move schematically from this paddock to the other for no reason, or they go to the paddock that has more grass. So in a very chaotic movement in which you go to the paddock that is ready, and you don't have control at all of the recovery periods from those systems. I don't see value on them, and I've seen a lot of non-optimal results. What we do in the holistic plant grazing is to follow that aide memoir, and you manage the complexity by treating problems one by one. So you can focus on one aspect and then make a decision, and that decision will influence the next step. So you create a plan twice a year, very simple. And it's a day in which the team gathers and has a chance to talk and to learn. So it's a big learning experience. And the important thing is that the people that take care of the livestock have the chance to say what has gone good, what was not very good. So they get involved deeply in the planning. So they own the plan. And that helps a lot to organize teams at the farm level. And also the decision making becomes transparent. Why are the animals in that place that moment? Because of this. We talked that in this planning session. And basically, you put there together from social aspect, like when are we going to be in holidays, or when we don't not want to be moving animals, with the calendar of the health program, with all the events that will be there, and which are the paddocks that we shouldn't be there for any reason, which are the paddocks that require special attention. So a complexity that no one from top of his head could manage. No way. And at the end of the process, you do to get to critical points in the growing season. The critical decision is to decide which will be the recovery periods. This is the distance in time between grazings. How much time do we need? If we take the animals out today, when should they come again? That's a critical issue number one in a growing season plan. And when the growing season ends and we are getting into the non-growing season, one of the critical points is, do we have enough forage for these animals? So that's why we use EOV, short-term monitoring, to estimate how much forage do we have and to match that with the demand of the animals. And really, if we don't have enough forage, make decisions early. And if we have a surplus of forage, well, we may decide to take it with more animals and to increase the business, or we decide, no, I will leave it for the land. I don't know. So you have some objective definition of what is your position before the non-growing season. And that will allow you to make better decisions in terms of stocking rate and the sequence of grazings during the winter. So the non-growing season and the growing season, 2 plants in a year, are the most profitable days in your calendar. One day to talk as a team and to think how to produce more grass or how to use it better and how to regenerate the land. With such a very small effort, we have seen thousands of hectares improve and increasing stocking rates. We have increased stocking rates in almost all the farms we have worked with very easily, with no inputs, no cost, only those 2 days in which you sit as a team and talk.
You're talking about recovery periods and the importance of those, specifically in the growing season. Why is it important for a grazing plan to be centered around recovery periods in comparison to any of the other number of variables that are at play in an operation?
Optimizing recovery periods is the way to increase your regeneration rate and the impact of the process. For example, in Corrientes, in northeastern Argentina, in your spring, we use 2 recovery periods for the growing season. If you use 45 days in the spring and 90 days in the summer, it will have a quite different result from, let's say, 60 days and 120. And it's a small, if you see, it's a small difference. You need to think about maximizing the production of forage and the community dynamics. And those things are not synonymous, because sometimes you have a very low diversity grassland that could be managed for a key species or one species that requires, let's say, a lucerne or alfalfa. You need alfalfa is ready every 30 days. Okay. If you manage just for a species, you will have only a species, one species. If you manage for diversity, you won't adjust your time just for alfalfa. You will adjust your time for alfalfa and something else. So you need to ask something else, what does it need to be there in the grassland? So it's a more complex decision, but it clearly is related with community dynamics and with carbon sequestration and with energy flow, and also with forage quality, in the sense of if you go too slow, you may lose some species, and you will definitely lose quality of forage, but you may get a big bulk of forage. And if you go too fast, you are overgrazing in an organized way. So it's still overgrazing, but instead of being random overgrazing in a continuous system, now you are overgrazing very neatly, and you come every 30 days, or on a grassland that needs 60 days, you're overgrazing, but in a more fashionable way. If you go too fast, you get high quality, maybe high animal performance, but you will reduce the amount of forage that you will have for the next winter or the next non-growing season, because the bulk of forage that you can create on a growing season plan will depend on recovery period. If you don't have a long recovery period before the winter, you will get to the winter with a small amount of forage that will reduce your overall stocking rate. So it's critical. And as we have the obsession to measure, we have a lot of data about that. And so we are quite confident at this moment that for every region, you need X amount of time. We are still learning. We are still challenging our ideas. But for example, in Patagonia, we cannot go back to a place during the growing season. So recovery period is 180 days, which is one grazing event per plant. And in some places, in tropical pastures, you may go 4 times to each paddock during the growing season. And that is the most delicate part of the art of this. But of course, if you don't measure, you cannot realize if you're going right or wrong.
What sort of things are you looking at if you're, out walking a pasture, looking at the forage, trying to decide if you need to adapt your grazing plan at all? What specific things are you looking at, and how would they influence or necessitate a change in your grazing plan?
If something is wrong, the animals will have a abnormal behavior because they want to move out. So you will see. And the other thing is the residue. If you don't have forage left, we don't manage for residues, but low residues tell us something about what's happening. So behavior of the animals, and residue will be the main things that will tell you something's wrong.
Are there any uh, are there any common themes you find on folks that are successful holistic managers, those that pick it up quickly and really succeed with it? And then in contrast to that, are there any commonalities for those who might struggle with it?
Yeah, probably those that grab the concept and follow it without too much consideration are those that finally thrive.
Mm.
Those that are not sure and they remain attached to old stuff, they cannot leave away, or they have consultants or advisors that tells them the opposite that what we told. That's happening in many cases too. That the farm had an advisor, and the advisor is old school, and we come with all these new ideas, and he says, "Are you crazy?" And they don't know what to do. Those are the ones that more likely could fail. Uh, I would say that those that start and see the results, they don't go back in general terms.
Mhm.
But the ones that leave, in general, they are bigger farms in which there is a manager, but the owner lives in another place, and the manager feels a little bit invaded, or there is an advisor in which you are creating noise in the decision, in the mid level of decision making. That could be a case. Um, uh, but fortunately, most of the people stay and keep doing the work. And those that thrive, I would say, those that are they don't grab pieces; they grab the whole thing.
Is there any advice that you would give to someone who's just getting started out?
If someone is worried about risk, the riskiest thing to do in this moment of the livestock industry is keep business as usual. That's the riskiest thing that you can do. So I think that changing the way you produce, the way you farm is always a risk, and you can reduce the risk by uh, working with other farmers and working with accredited professionals from the Savory Institute. So there are some resources that can help you to minimize the risk, and now there are some incentives coming in, like environmental services. So uh, I would say that I wouldn't lose more time. I think that we are just about in time to change. A little bit late, my opinion, but we are about in time to change, and the benefits are so clear, and the future of livestock industry is so dependent of doing this change quick. I cannot imagine someone in 10 years ahead, in 2035, trying to sell beef that has 30 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of meat of footprint. I cannot imagine that situation. I think that will be out of business, will be impossible to sell. That's my personal opinion. And we can be part of the solution. We regenerative grazing, we have measured that we can sequester carbon, and we can have meat that has negative footprint. No other protein for human consumption, for those that are popular, can say that. Let's say you can have fake burgers. They still have 4 kilograms of CO2 of footprint per kilogram of hamburger. And you may have a Patagonian lamb could have 700 kilograms of CO2 sequestered per kilogram of lamb. So, so regenerative livestock it's a great solution for the farmer in terms of the business, but a great solution for climate change mitigation and the safest place to be in 1 decade, because when we get to 2 degrees increase of temperature, uh, I think all the rules of the game will change. And so we're procrastinating, and we are just seeing what happens. But there are there's still people that negationist about climate change. It's sad, but that's real. But I think that there will be a big emergency and crisis in 10 years. We will achieve 450 ppm of CO2 in the air. The planet will increase 2 degrees. Now we are 1.2, 1.3. In some cases 1.5. And I think that as the pandemic changed the world for almost 2 years, I think the crisis of the climate change and land degradation will affect for a longer time the way we live, the way we produce, and the basis of the economy. So, not to being, I don't want to be too catastrophic, but I think that humanity is a ship that is going to hit an iceberg, and we are seeing the iceberg, and the iceberg is visible, and we have some time to change the way we do things. So that's my hope.
Yeah. Well, and climate change aside, knowing how loaded of a conversation that can be, depending who you're talking to, the potential for regenerating grasslands through improved management provides so many co-benefits beyond just the carbon sequestration. I mean, you're healthier animals, improving wildlife habitat, improving water cycles, which helps in the face of drought or flooding or wildfires, creating nutrient-dense food, utilization of natural fibers instead of petroleum-based fibers that are so dominant in the textile industries. Like all of these pieces that come along with holistic management. It brings a lot of hope for the future.
Yes, of course. And I think even if climate change was not real, it will be, for all the reasons that you have mentioned, it will be worthwhile to do this. So we don't need to believe in climate change to be very happy to do all these changes and to produce all these outcomes that are so relevant.
As we've talked about holistic management and holistic planned grazing, I didn't hear anything from you that was drastically different from the way that people are used to managing. I mean, like these are simple changes that can be made, and it's not necessarily more labor intensive. I'd say it's more intellectually intensive. You got to think more about what you're doing and be proactive. But these are realistic changes that can be made. And, I think you're a prime example of how much impact can be had across a region. I mean, the sheer volume of hectares and farms and people that you've trained, not just in Argentina, but all around the world is just impressive. And I guess I want to thank you for all the work that you've been doing to help share this and spread this far and wide. We are grateful for it. And, I guess from Savory Institute, we are grateful just knowing that there are people that are trying to do good things in the world and make it as a livable planet for future generations.
Thank you, Bobby. Here we have a big team, more than 100 professionals working at this moment. So these figures that you are mentioned, that we are happy with them, but that's the result of a very committed, purposeful team.
Well, any last words, Pablo, before I let you go? Anything you want our audience to know, or just nuggets of wisdom or life advice that you want to pass along?
We started talking about the need of addressing, in my case, I didn't want to change the world. I wanted to save Patagonia from desertification. And my perspective is that we're losing the battle. We have a bunch of farmers, those innovative farmers that are doing the job and they are showing the way, but we don't have in our community a sense of urgency of the changes. And as I go out of my beloved Patagonia, I see the same. And so my message is that if we don't put time on this process as a variable, and we will still be dealing with land degradation, rural poverty, low production, and unhealthy food, and all the things that the opposite of the things that you have mentioned. So my message is, this is great. Don't lose it and don't waste your time. This is something that is ready, is available. There is a whole network in the world wishing to provide help. And the transition is something very achievable. Anyone can do it. There's no barrier in terms of size of the farmer or education. Everyone can do it. And as you do it, you find a new meaning and a new reason and a different sense of rural life. And I put all my hope in this process and in the speed of the process.
Wonderful. Well, Pablo, thank you so much for joining today, for diving deep onto holistic management.
Thank you, Bobby.
All right. Thank you,
Thank you so
Pablo.
much.
I appreciate it, sir. Have a good one. This episode was edited by Claire Everson, and her theme music was composed and performed by Travis McNamara. Ruminations is a production of the Savory Institute, the Savory Foundation, and Land to Market. If you like this episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and subscribing to our YouTube channel, where you can find video versions of all episodes, plus other content. If you're looking for show notes, links to things mentioned in the episode, transcripts, sponsorship info, or if you'd like to even suggest a guest to come on the show, all of that can be found on our website at savory.global/podcast. And last but certainly not least, thank you to our committed and growing community of regenerating members whose monthly support allows Savory to produce this podcast and continue advancing holistic management all across the globe. If you're not yet a member, we welcome you to join us with open arms, and we would love to have you as part of our community. Just sign up at savory.global/member. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.